You're listening to Pondering Pennies with Dempsy and Ray.
All right, here for the next episode of Pondering Pennies, we got Mr. Sean from Queens, New York, to talk about his upbringing and some life events that really changed the way he's living life, his outlook, his perspective. He's an avid basketball player. He loves exercise, borderline body dysmorphia, some may say, at the rate that he exercises and the vigor.
Well,
He's
my therapist hasn't told me to stop yet, so I'm just going to keep going.
I don't think that would be the therapist to tell you too much exercising. I think that would just be the doctor, you know?
What do doctors know?
He's a newly minted, some may even say bandwagon fan for hockey, for the new Vegas team, the league expansion.
Is it bandwagoning if you've started liking hockey their inaugural year? So figure just start with the new team, you know?
It's either bandwagon or day one ride or die. No in between, though. I just haven't decided yet which one.
I'm pretty sure it's day one ride or die.
Fair enough. He's
That sounds
also
a lot better.
Heavily into philanthropy. I can't say it. If you could pick up this ball for me and carry it across the finish line and what that word is.
Well, Dempsey, I do love hearing this struggle in your voice, but it is philanthropy, the word you're looking for.
I appreciate it, whether it's bidding on Picassos for charity or building wells in Africa or purchasing a mic for a struggling podcast called Pondering Pennies. This man does it all.
Again, an up-and-coming podcast, a day one ride or die fan, one might say.
Oh, I like the tie-in there. So, Mr. Sean, tell us, what was it like growing up in Queens, New York? I feel like growing up in the boroughs, most people probably have a skewed perception of such a major city and what that looks like and don't realize how different each borough can be from the other.
So from early on, just a little bit of background. I was fortunate enough to have both my parents raise me, and that was great. But they both worked a lot. They both worked a lot. My mom was also in college at night. So on top of my parents raising me, I had a couple other families that contributed to my upbringing. There was my grandma, and she was, and like when I was born, she was already super old. She was fantastic. Love her to bits, but she was ancient by the time I was born.
What are we qualifying as like ancient here? Because my grandparents are like in their late 80s now. So like, was she that old already, or we're talking like 60?
My grandma was born in 1915.
Oh my God. So she was like a teenager for World War I and like an adult ready to have kids for World War II.
Well, she was
like, your grandma remembers reading Times Magazine, Hitler Person of the Year, and thinking, wow, this guy's a real up and comer.
I mean, I would really think that she probably didn't do that. But I never actually did get around to asking her about that particular issue. Her husband, my grandpa, that is how that works, was born in 1912. For perspective, the Titanic sank 2 months after he was born.
What a crazy... Are they still with you today?
They are not. They have since passed.
If you don't mind me asking, when did they pass?
My grandpa, well before I was born. I believe he passed sometime in the 70s. And then my grandma, I went sometime when I was in high school, either freshman or sophomore year.
So it would have been like the late 2000s.
She
like
was
7, 8.
Yeah, she was the ripe old age of 93, I believe.
Imagine like planes not being around. When were planes invented?
That's a good question. One I do not have an answer to.
You said she was born in 1915?
Yeah, it's either 1915 or 1918, but yeah, it's one of those years.
So 1915. Imagine like planes not even being around, or like a new and up and coming thing, right? I feel like they had to have been around for like maybe like a decade with the Wright brothers by then. And the next thing you know, you're hearing about this crazy dude with an electric car company that wants to put people on Mars, and we've been to the moon and developed bombs that can just destroy the entire Earth, and people got private jets to fly around the world. That must have been like and when you think about it too, like we grew up and like cell phones were just starting to become heavily like prevalent in society.
So
and now we got like little SD cards that can fit terabytes of information on them.
So I couldn't tell you where I read it, but there was somewhere that I remember reading. If you took a person from like, let's say 1500 and dropped them in like 1820, that's a more than 300-year difference, clearly. But they would have an easier time adapting than if you took someone from, I don't know, 1900 and dropped them in 2023.
I mean, it makes sense. I'm sure like a lot of stuff was like handmade by workers in factories still. Fields are still plowed by horses.
You didn't
maybe
have
like trains.
I mean,
were trains a thing in 1500?
No,
like coal trains?
Definitely not.
No?
No, that would yeah, because I'm pretty sure we're like significantly pre-industrial revolution, you know?
Yeah.
1500, we're still talking, that's the Renaissance kind of time period. I mean, we're thinking about it like Columbus sailing the ocean blue, 1492. So
yeah,
like,
good point. Someone from the 1500s, depending on how fast word travels, was like, what do you mean some dude, what was Columbus, Italian, but funded by the Spanish?
I believe
Portuguese.
I believe that is the way that goes.
Like, oh, what are you telling me? Some Italian dude funded by somebody on the Iberian Peninsula just found a whole new continent or two. What are you talking about?
Oh,
clearly would have fallen off the map. Don't you know anything about geography and topography?
You're a witch. You must be a witch.
Heretic, burn them at the stake.
R.I.P. to all those who burn at the stake. This podcast is dedicated, and remember, it's to them.
So, raised by your grandparents, grown up in Queens. Parents worked a lot. Mom was moonlighting as a student.
Well, I mean, I don't want to discredit my parents, because my parents, they did raise me. My grandma just helped significantly. Then on top of my grandma, there was my babysitter who kind of stepped in when both my parents were at work, and my grandma was also busy. Actually, it was more when she got older, but again, when I was born, she was old. So we're talking like 5-6-year-old me hanging out with this babysitter. Her name was Linda Andrews, and she is fantastic. She's just one of the nicest people I've ever met. And she helped to expose me to a lot of different places and people, because, you know, my parents are great, but they're not going down the avenue, kind of learning and meeting new stuff. My town was also very Spanish, like statistically. So before the question gets asked, I don't speak Spanish well, like at all. I understand enough of it to get a gist of what the person is saying, but I cannot respond. It's a lot of hand gestures, and eventually we figure out what we're trying to communicate.
I can just picture you downtown Queens trying to barter for something with some Spanish man.
You make it sound like I'm trading beads.
Are they like people from Spain, or when you say Spanish, are we talking like people coming over from Mexico, Cuba?
They are Hispanic. My town had a large Dominican, Puerto Rican, and I forgot what the third one was. There was like a significant group of, it might have been people from El Salvador in my neighborhood, but that might be totally wrong. But you know, Hispanic origin, definitely Dominican people, definitely Puerto Rican people, and then an assortment of other Hispanic people. And then as I got older, there was a large influx of Eastern Europeans, primarily Polish people. So I had a lot of exposure to different languages.
Why were Polish people coming over, Eastern European in general, coming over in a large batch?
I have no idea. And I don't even know if they were coming over or if they just all moved to the neighborhood around in the same like series of years.
Mm-hmm.
I remember 1 year when I was in grammar school, we had 4 kids join the class, and I think 3 of them like first language Polish. So that was interesting, because now we had people that were bilingual in that they could speak Spanish and English, and then we had people that could speak English and Polish, and then you had me who was fighting his way through English and being sarcastic to the teacher, which is not appreciated.
Struggle bussing it in his own native language, meanwhile looking highly Irish.
These polyglots just showing me up.
That's weird too, because if it was in grammar school, that was definitely before like the 2008 Great Recession. So it's not like economic fallout would have led to them leaving the home country. So I wonder what that catalyst was, or just happen chance you were just in the right place for the right time for the great Polish Queen migration.
That's the other thing. I mean, I'm not sure it was like, again, for all I know, these people could have just moved from a different neighborhood in Queens to a different neighborhood in Queens. I don't know if the neighborhood I grew up in was like cheaper than other neighborhoods, or safer, or we had better schools. I really couldn't tell. Or we had worse schools. I couldn't tell you. But there was a lot of transitional periods, I guess you could say.
Interesting. You got a older brother too, right? How did that work out? I mean, that would obviously explain why your grandparents were so much older. Guessing your parents are also older as well then.
So my brother is from my mom's first marriage, meaning that he is technically my half brother, but we don't really make that distinction all that often. He's in his 40s, so my mom had him when she was fairly young. I think 22 or 23 maybe. He's a great guy. We don't have a ton in common. We have a mom in common, obviously.
Very strong commonality.
Yeah. More in common than I have with most people. But hobbies wise, takes all kinds. So we don't have a ton of hobbies in common. But super nice dude. I tend to lean more science than anything else. He tends to lean highly into math, which I wasn't particularly good at growing up. I got better at it, especially in college. I was fine at it, but
I think math is one of those tricky ones, because I think we both know a math guy. I know who I'm talking about when I say math. But every time he does math around us, it's very wrong, and it's very easy math, like adding, and it just goes so far south. It's like, oh, you got playing like Call of Duty, like, all right, Sean's got 2 grenades, Dempsey's got 2 grenades, we got 4 grenades. And he's like, and we're all like, yep, 4. And he's like, 4? What are you talking about? We should have at least 12 with that math. Like, what math? What math?
Is there something else that we're missing here? Where's the X? Did someone solve for X?
So I don't blame you for the math thing. That clearly takes a special kind of person.
No, he I guess the best way to say it is he has a very analytical mind, and it's benefited him greatly, because he's a lawyer, and the fact that he dots all his I's and crosses all his T's make him particularly good at what he does. So, whatever works.
So, growing up in Queens, what was there to do in the concrete jungle?
Well, I, like most kids, I hung out on the block with the other kids that were around my age. And then I wasn't into sports because I was a particularly small child. And, being basically a hobbit does not benefit you in any sports, especially CYO, especially when there are other kids in your grade that are like basically full on adults in size, you know? No, there weren't that many kids that were like that tall. We had one kid that was probably pushing 5'6" as like a sixth grader, and we're like, you're a giant. But other than that, everyone else was like normal height for a fifth or sixth grader. I was just
fun
very
fact.
short.
I was the height that I am now in the 7th grade. I was massive. And the doctors were like, this dude is going to be like 7 feet tall. Why don't you have him in basketball? Hit 6 foot. Didn't grow since 7th grade. Just hit a hard stop. Not really sure what happened there.
To give you an idea, I started high school. I was 4'11".
I think that's borderline like dwarfism.
That's a little person. But I also started high school. I think I was when I started college I was 17, so that means I had to be 13 when I started high school.
Yep.
But when I started college I was 5'8". Then when I graduated from college I was 5'11". I never made it 6 foot.
Well,
and I
you just took you were running the marathon. I was sprinting, and you were running the marathon.
I wouldn't lie about it and tell people I was 6 foot. I had people be like, dude, just say 6 foot. I'm like, no, just because you tell everyone you're 5'10" and you're really like 5'4" doesn't mean I'm going to tell people I'm 6 foot, right? They'll have to figure out why there's a 3 or 4 inch difference between you and me, even though I'm an inch taller than you, according to our statements.
Here you've seen the memes, and it's like dudes that are 6 feet tall, and it'll show like Brendan Shaw, the world's strongest man, like 4 times over, who's like 6'8", and then it shows dudes who are 5'11", and it'll show Danny DeVito.
I mean, if I could be Danny DeVito, I'm gonna take that. That works for me.
I don't envy Danny DeVito. not to bully Danny DeVito, but I'm good. I'm happy with being Dempsy.
I will not stand for any sort of DeVito slander here. He's a national treasure.
I'm not saying he's not a respectable man. I'm just saying his qualities aren't for me.
Fair. It would be a rough life going through life as Danny DeVito in my estimation.
Yeah, because my best guess too is like I'm only Danny DeVito in stature, in like physical traits, and that alone, like the career, the fame, none of that is accompanied with it. I'm just Danny DeVito genetically.
I feel like you and I might have the charisma to carry us, not as far as Danny DeVito, but we could still be fairly successful individuals.
I could just picture
Danny
you,
DeVito, I guess.
Well, is that Sonny from Philadelphia, where Danny DeVito walks in? He's like, I don't see too good, so I just start blasting, and I could see you come rolling in, and you're like, I don't see too good, so I just started blasting. Yeah, which also might work depending on like the atmosphere, you know.
I feel like that's a good transition there because you did say rolling in, and I just don't want to confuse the listeners. I am in a wheelchair. Quite an unusual story.
Born in the wheelchair, for those who don't know, or later in life situation going on there.
So thank you for asking me to clarify. No, well, fun fact: no one has ever been born with a wheelchair. That would just be that would be astounding. The poor woman. Oh my goodness.
There is an episode of Family Guy where it shows Joe Swanson being born, and he is born with a wheelchair in that skit.
So for people out there that don't know, Family Guy is a work of fiction.
It's not an autobiography.
I know, it got me too for a while.
Dang.
But no, I was not born with a need for a wheelchair. I was up and running around till the ripe old age of 22. When I was 22, a tree fell on the car I was in, and it changed a whole lot. It was a real mess, and that's kind of putting it lightly. Should I list the injuries from that one event, or?
Yeah, I think that really brings the totality of the incident, paints it in a clear picture.
So the lasting, or the most lasting injury, I guess, would be the spinal cord. Now, my spinal cord got pinched around T2, T3 for those interested, because T2
that would be the thoracic lumbar, right? For those that don't know, like C, T, all that stuff.
Right. It would be the thoracic spine, upper thoracic spine. I had T2 and T3 were burst fractures and subluxation. It was the subluxation that caused the spinal cord injury. Now I also had a brain bleed, which gave some really dire scans early on in the injury because it caused some swelling on the upper part of my spine. I had a hairline fracture in C3. I broke my floating rib. Couldn't tell you which side. It never really got addressed outside of the initial hospital. I only kind of knew it because breathing hurt for a while, but doctors didn't seem too concerned with that because everything else I had going on. I had some heart trauma, more or less like a kind of a bruise, for lack of a better term. Then, it was not looking good for old Sean here. Let me tell you.
And though, for those that don't know, subluxation is basically, layman's terms, is like a misalignment of one of the vertebrae in the spine, which can be from something minor, could cause a headache, all the way to paralysis.
And I mean, I couldn't tell you if I had a headache early on. I have both retrograde amnesia and regular amnesia for 5 hours before the accident till something like 12 days after. Just no clue what I did. I was told I was quite funny in those 12 days, but they also had me on just about every drug imaginable. So there's that.
So for those first 12 days when the accident occurred, or I guess backpedal a little bit. Interesting fact on that was this particular tree, like a branch or a whole limb or part of the tree, had actually hit somebody prior to you, right? And where it occurred, the people in charge of, like that park, that area, were ordered to take the tree down, but failed to do that, right? Because of the first person that was injured.
So, no. It was a tree that should have been, so that didn't happen. There was no initial breakage or anything, but it was pretty clear if the appropriate steps had been taken, this would have been very avoidable, because going back to the records and whatnot, it was like,
it was already determined this was like a deadfall tree and should have been taken down.
If the tree had been examined properly, it would have been shown that this tree should not have been left standing.
So was there like a designated authority for that area that is supposed to do things like that, like survey the area and make sure trees that pose a hazard get taken down, or was there no process in place for this?
So the tree was along a public thoroughfare. Granted, there are many trees in the area. That does not mean they shouldn't be looked at, fairly thoroughly. If they pose a threat to the general public, it's part of what you kind of hope. You don't want anything looming that is a threat to the general public in any regard, Mm-hmm. Wouldn't just leave a flaming vat of napalm in the middle of the street, would you? It's a very dramatic difference, but still, like, that's...
I do hate when I come across vats of napalm in the streets on my journeys out and about grocery shopping.
Yeah, I mean, if I had a nickel for every time, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Everyone knows that's why Blockbuster actually went out of business. Flaming vats of napalm were just too great of a risk, and Netflix solved that issue. No, for the younger people, Netflix used to be a mail order DVD service. If you're ordering DVD straight to your mailbox, bada boom, bada bing, no more flaming vats of napalm.
One might think there's no connection there, but you just got to look into it. It's there.
Exactly. And then once there was no prey for the flaming vats and napalm in public, thanks to Netflix, they also went extinct, just like Blockbuster.
And such is evolution.
As you were saying before, I took us down that wild tangent.
But yeah, the story only proceeds to get kind of more ridiculous from there, if we're being honest. So again, very touch and go the first few days. It was kind of is he gonna make it? Is he not gonna make it? And they brought in my family from not just like my parents, who, were obviously there, but they brought in my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. I had my cousin's family show up at one point. I had high school teachers come to see me. Again, people could be lying to me because they get no memory, but
you could have been all alone and they were just like, oh yeah, everyone loved you and knew and remembered that you're such a great guy. Just a line at the door, buddy. Just a line at the door of support.
Actually, now that you say it out loud, that makes way more sense.
No. You're a great guy. I'm sure a lot of people came out to show support. I'm sure your room was filled with flowers.
I hope not. Flowers are such a waste of money. But yeah, so after that all happened, I went to a rehab. So my first memory after all of this going on, I woke up in a rehab hospital in New Jersey, of all places.
Good old dirty Jersey.
The dirty Jers, as we call it. But no, that's a joke. That I woke up in Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation, which is in New Jersey. And hopefully no one listening to this ever has to deal with a spinal cord injury. But if you do, you want to be at Kessler because they have some top-notch care for spinal cord injury. And everyone there was super nice. But I was there from the end of July till pretty late in September. And I was basically just living there and doing the in-house PT. They made me, this might be a shock to you, but they made me meet with a speech language pathologist because they thought my affect was off.
What's affect? Is that just like your general tone, how you're kind of like a monotone, soft-spoken guy?
Well, it's because I'm monotone, but also because I'm sarcastic. So they thought my affect was off because of the monotone, but also they didn't think I understood what was going on because I would respond to the doctors sarcastically. Mm-hmm. And then after a couple days, they're like, well, his brain isn't more broken than it was before the tree. So maybe he's not actually suffering from flat affect. This might just be him.
Turns out this always was the baseline.
Yeah, exactly. It was hard for them to understand that this is and always has been me. So I was there for a while. And then, Dempsey, would you like to take a guess where I went after rehab?
After rehab.
Now, what would make sense? This is a guy that just had a tree fall on him. He woke up and he was told, hey, this is a wheelchair. You need this from now on.
I'm guessing you would learn how to cope with
absolutely
using
right. They sent me to go live with some monks.
Oh, okay. We talking like Tibetan monks, or are we talking like a weird subsect that lives in Manhattan and they're like Hasidic Jews?
So formally, they like technically not monks. They are Marist Brothers, which is a religious order that was highly involved in the high school that I worked in. The high school I attended, but I worked at their, it was volunteer work, but I did work at their retreat center upstate for years before I got hurt. And when I got hurt, they knew I couldn't go back to Queens because, fun fact, Queens has a lot of houses. It also has a lot of stairs. Wheelchairs and stairs, not a great mix.
You're telling me that a highly dense city in a borough of an island is not handicap accessible?
Not as handicap accessible as you might think.
And I thought this whole time New York was highly progressive, but really, they're a bunch of enablists.
I believe ableist is the term you're looking for.
They're enabling ableism.
How could they ever enable ableisms? But no, I owe a great deal to the Marist brothers. They were a bunch of phenomenal dudes, and it was really confusing to just about everyone that I went and I lived with them.
How long of a time period was that for?
That was from late September till, of all times, April 1st of 2017. So
April Fool's Day. I'm out of here, guys.
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, not pretty much. Exactly. You nailed it. And my family and I moved out to Long Island, where I live now.
Were your parents with you during that time, or were they back in Queens?
They were living in Queens, just living the high. No, I'm kidding. They were living in Queens, looking for houses that were more accessible.
Okay. Why Long Island? Is that still convenient to where your parents were working at the time? Did they even continue to work after that transition, or like family nearby still, or just why not Wyoming or whatever, Florida?
It was more convenient for my parents to stay near their work, stay near their family, stay near their friends. So we had a support system for what we were going through. So that worked out as best as we could hope. So that's why we're here on Long Island now.
Interesting. And personally, I know I'm always advocating for that Alaska move, right? The last bastion of freedom that we have on this earth that we must fight tooth and nail to cling on to. I still think it's the right move for you, even though you vehemently, you very passionately oppose that idea. So when does the move to somewhere without snow? Because I know snow is your mortal enemy.
One would think it's snow in general, but really it's just cold in general. I don't do cold well at all, and part of that is me being a big sissy, and I never did cold well. The other part of it is my blood pressure is low due to the spinal cord injury. So
something with I'm assuming there's still some kind of either the damage of the nerves in the spinal cord or continued pressure from any injuries has something to do with affecting your heart rate and your blood pressure.
So you want me to drop some dime store science on you to the best of my knowledge?
I'm ready. Hit me with that Dollar General store science.
All right, here we go. So you have skeletal muscle that supports or helps to support your body. Mm-hmm. Everyone does, and it does a good job at supporting your body. Now, when you're not using limbs, it's like muscle is like anything. Muscle is the way that they tell you your brain works. If you don't use it, you lose it. Mm-hmm. If you're not using the muscles, they atrophy. And part of the reason my blood pressure is low is because the skeletal muscle, when you're moving around, helps to push the blood through your body.
Really?
Yeah. So me not moving around, and again, you can fact check me on this because I can always make mistakes, but not moving around as much as someone who is able-bodied, my blood kind of will settle in my lower extremities, which, it doesn't do that often, fortunately for me, but that's why some people who have spinal cord injuries deal with things like edema. And it's something you have to be aware of at all times,
Mm. When you're asleep at night, do you sleep with your legs propped up at all to fight edema, or do you wear like any kind of compression clothing like socks and stuff to help with that, or has it just not been an issue as of yet?
As of now, it hasn't been an issue. It's been, and I think, or I would hope that it's not an issue moving forward, because everything would be even across the board. I'm laying down. It's not like my head might be a little propped up by a pillow, but I know you think I have a big head, but it's not big enough to take up that much blood. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it's a little big. You ever seen the Fighting Irish mascot?
Yeah. Well, I am incredibly Irish. My name is Sean.
It's a big head, just kind of like the Fighting Irish mascot. And really, if you think about it, 2023, I don't know if we should have a Fighting Irish. I think that's got to go the way of the Redskins. I'm not sure what that's all about.
I have heard this argument before, and I don't really have a feeling on it. I am super duper Irish. I'm third generation American on one side and like sixth generation on the other side. But I took one of those fancy DNA tests and it came back 99.7% Irish.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
I'm basically a potato. The 0.3% was Finnish. So I'm basically a potato that some 100 years ago a Viking spat on as they sailed past
Viking
Ireland.
Spat on. It's pretty weird. What are your ancestors doing? Going into the pubs, asking people, "Oh, are you Irish?
Oh, do you happen to be Irish? You're not. You're not. I can't even speak to you.
You're not an O'Reilly or whatever. No. Okay.
What's your name? You. Oh, your name's Brady. Oh, come on over. You seem like my type of people.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So you go hang out with the monks.
I go hang out with the monks, and then eventually I moved to Long Island. So there were parties that were supposed to be responsible for the tree that caused such damage, and we were in a lawsuit with them for quite an amount of time. Eventually, it did settle, but it was
talking like weeks, months, years. Did like anyone reach out to you guys saying like, hey, like you might be eligible for compensation due to someone's negligence or, whatever? Or like, how did that all come about? Or were you or your parents exploring those options to see if anyone was liable for what occurred?
Well, my dad works in law. My brother works in law. My mom was working in a law firm. So it was something that I guess someone thought. We have other family members that were lawyers or worked in law as well. So someone thought about it at some point. Again, I really highly doubt it was me because I'm not really sure what was going on. Just people hitting me up with copious amounts of painkillers for those first couple weeks. But yeah, we wound up getting into a lawsuit and we settled out of court, and then life kind of continued for a solid 2.5 weeks, and then the world shut down because of COVID.
And that's where Dempsey came into the picture to keep you company on Modern Warfare 1.
Yeah, so I had I don't think we'll know the real ramifications of COVID-19 for decades, if not longer. And I'm talking both the virus itself, the potential effects of the vaccine, the potential effects of the potential effects of the long-term mental effects on society from people being quarantined for so long.
Yeah, I think definitely young Gen Z, as we progress, is going to be definitely some kind of way socially interacting in person. They were already like dubbed the iPad kids, right? So then we took the iPad kids and we locked them inside for 24 months with the iPads. And now we want them to be normal.
Well, I mean, have you
Are
seen
normal, I should say.
Have you seen it? They're now saying things like sheesh and no cap on God, or
We're seeing kids go, sheesh, or
yeah, you're doing it correctly.
You need to be chupapi no me no instead of chupapi no me no. Hit them with the whoa. Sheesh.
So I didn't realize you were a Gen Z kid.
Well, as we know, my line of work for a few years there really had me interacting with hundreds and thousands of Gen Z kids. So I became quite fluent in their dialect.
You would have fit in very well in the neighborhood I grew up in. You'd probably be speaking both Polish and Spanish by now.
I guess I have an aptitude for picking up languages. I did have to take like this test when I was first starting out my job that like rated your ability to learn a language. And I scored very high, like in the 98, 99 percentile. And they're like, you're not. Yeah, we got different plans for you. And I was like, nope, absolutely not. Sorry, I do not want to learn a language. I am not your guy. School was always pretty easy for me, but I was by no means a studious man. Like, I just was on honor roll and stuff because things were easy, not because of my tenacity and, willpower for school. I mean, I remember one time, not to get too sidetracked here, I was going to miss honor roll one quarter my senior year unless I got 100 in one of my classes. So I was like, what is the easiest class I can go to get 100? Mind you, I already had a 99 in my social economics class. So I was like, she is not going to bump me up to 100 that 1 point just because. I was like, who's the person? Who's the guy? Who's the gal? I was like, it's the woodshop teacher, right? Like that's got to be the first name on everyone's mind, right? The woodshop teacher. So I go to him. And I was like, hey, I need 100 this quarter. Otherwise, I won't make honor roll. I'll miss it by like half a point. He's like, what do you do for me? I'm like, I guess whatever you want, as long as you don't like Sandusky me. He's like, all right, you're going to be my bitch for the quarter. And I was like, your bitch? He's like, yeah, you be my bitch for the quarter.
I just said I didn't want to be Sandusky'd.
I was just like, too easy. Consider it done. He's like, all right, bitch, go clean up the tool room. It's looking pretty dirty. I was like, too easy. 100's 100, baby girl. And I stayed on honor roll.
There we go. I guess that's one way to do it for sure. I guess.
Yeah. But as you were saying before I went on the story about how I became the woodshop teacher's bitch for 3 months.
I don't even remember what I was saying before then.
What were your parents coming to the conclusion of a lawsuit and you were doped up on painkillers?
Yes. So I think we had already gotten past that. I think we were talking more about COVID, and that's how.
Oh, that's how we met.
That's how you entered my life there, Dempsey.
Through a mutual friend, Carr, who actually, realistically, if you didn't have that accident, I don't think you would have randomly reached out to him when you did, reconnected that friendship, and then you wouldn't have started playing games again with him, and then you wouldn't have met me.
So there's a couple things there. One, I probably would have still reached out because, believe it or not, I've always been weird, and I always have been one to just reach out if I haven't talked to someone in a while. But no, I probably wouldn't have played video games because that was just not something I did before I got hurt. Before I got hurt, I was really, really, really stupidly active. I was a personal trainer. I was a lifeguard. I just finished EMT school. I was hoping to get on FDNY. I knew Carr because the two of us worked security in college. Now, Carr is much bigger than I am, and he was much bigger than I was in college. The primary reason that I worked security, and I would do air quotes if you could see my hands right now, was because of it's probably because of the flat affect. You have no idea how unsettling it is to people when they try and get they try to intimidate you and you don't react. That just throws people for a loop. Now, I was in pretty good shape, so if things did get kind of out of hand, I could either move out of the way of most drunk people's attacks, or I could kind of just hold them in place. But
they're off center of gravity, wild windmill haymakers into the night sky.
Yeah, just take a pretty quick step back and watch them hit the ground, and then Carr or someone bigger would come over, and it would their night would end early.
Finish the situation for you while you stood guard.
Yeah. But no, I had to talk down a couple people from a couple different situations in college. They were interesting, to say the least.
I can imagine you were the voice of reason, and Carr was the fist of action.
That's one way to put it. Yeah, it was probably more the calm head than anything else.
Would you like to share the time when the gun came out?
So I'd been working the door because it was pretty easy to check IDs, and I'm a pretty I don't know if I would say extrovert, but I do like talking to people. So I knew most of the people at my college, and again, it was a fairly small college. So someone asked me to take care of something inside real quick. So I went inside, and I wasn't inside more than a couple minutes when someone said there was a fight outside. And as I had just told you, I very rarely got involved physically during altercations. But I would go outside to try and talk people down. I got outside just in time to see one guy hit the floor. It was not a student. It was a guy who lived in the neighborhood that my college was in. But I recognized him because he'd been at the bars that we kind of hosted these events at pretty frequently. And he was a nice guy, but he did not look good when he hit the floor. He was a big fella too. He was probably 6'2", 6'3", skinny though. So I walked over, and at the time, on top of working security, I was also a lifeguard. So I dealt with a couple slip and falls again. This was very different because those were typically old people in the locker rooms or on the pool deck. This was a younger guy who had just been kind of cold clocked, and he hit the ground hard. He was bleeding from the back of the head, and he was making what I would describe as guttural noises. So he was not breathing clearly at all. And while I was trying to like make sure he was still around, like everything was going on, because he was breathing, he had a heartbeat, obviously. Someone came up and pulled a gun on me, and the whole idea of me staying calm was the whole reason I had the job. He pulled a gun on me, and my reaction was really? You're going to pull a gun on me? And he looked just thrown for a loop. So much so that he put the gun back in his waistband. And I turned around to ask for help getting this guy into like someplace that he wasn't just laying on the floor outside. But everyone else had run away as soon as the gun came out. So that was that.
Did you get more info from the guy? Like, was this the unconscious man's friend, and he thought like you were just continuing to like lay hammer fists on his friend, and he pulled out a gun, like, not on my watch? Or was this man just looking to escalate things in general?
So I did wind up talking to him after the fact, and he was a friend of that guy, and I don't remember at this point if he thought I was trying to hurt his friend more or if he thought I was trying to steal something from his friend. He did tell me that he goes, yeah, you shouldn't, like, don't even, I mean, and he started stuttering. So I assumed it was just, I assumed whatever he was going to say next was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, yeah, it wasn't even a real gun. And I was like,
what?
Yeah. He tried to tell me that. And
I feel like that's the quickest way to die. If you pull a gun out, like, I carry a gun everywhere I go.
Sure.
If I get in a fight, I'm gonna fight you. You know, the deadly force is not the first course of action, even though I do joke around sometimes about it.
Sure.
But once the gun comes out, like, the gun is out. That should not be your go-to. If you pull a gun out, you intend to destroy what is ever in front of you. So the fact that he pulled out a fake gun,
oh my God,
didn't assume somebody else had a real gun or a knife.
No, again,
somebody is dying once a gun comes out, generally speaking. So that is a giant escalation to make and not be prepared to follow through on.
Absolutely. And I said something, I mean, you know me at this point. You know I don't use particularly strong language, but I did that day. And again, a little bit more aggressively than this, but I said, you are a real moron then, because you happen to be incredibly lucky that you pulled this on me and no one else in this neighborhood, because this is the quickest way to, quite frankly, get shot. And he kind of like went like, ha, ha, ha. And I was like, get out of here. And he did. He left. They took that guy back to his house. He came to in the parking lot. He couldn't tell me what day it was, but he knew that Obama was president. So his friend was like, nah, he's good. I'm like, all right, well, you're his friend.
To be fair, at that point, we were approaching an 8-year span. So there could have been almost a decade's worth of time he thought he was in at that point.
Absolutely. He knew that he was some point in the late...
He was like, it's definitely sometime between 2008 and 2016.
Yeah, pretty much. He's like, it's somewhere in this time period. I don't know what day it is. Come on, ask me something easy. But it was, that was an interesting time.
And then, fun fact, was this before or after Carr just decided to blow up his whole academic career and just start from scratch after already being in school for like 3 years?
So he is older than me, and he restarted school basically when I got there. Not because I had gotten there. I didn't know this guy before this, but it just so happened when I got there, he was restarting his academic career. So, but he's made the best of it, man. And he's no worse for wear. He got a couple extra years in college, which I would argue is a lot of fun if you don't wind up significantly in the hole. And he's got a great career. He's got a great girlfriend. He's got a very supportive family. They have a wonderful dog. So
Soon to be 2 dogs, from what I hear.
that is word on the street.
So we're approaching the 1 hour mark. If you don't mind, I have a condition. It's time for me to use the restroom.
Absolutely. I will be here.
All right, back from that extended break. Mr. Sean, aka Senor Lamas, the scourge of the earth, according to some people, some might say.
I have been accused of such.
What were some things that changed for you that like never really crossed your mind until you came across working your way through those changes since the accident and like unforeseen side effects, I guess, and how you deal with that?
Stairs.
I would fight any stair for you.
Well, I don't know how fighting a stair would go. You might lose. They're a pretty stationary object.
I watched my dog eat a stair one time, so if she can eat a stair, I could definitely beat up a stair.
Well, I put nothing past baby Lacey, so no, I mean stairs are difficult. There's a lot of things that it just doesn't occur to most people. For example, there's a couple different types of injuries. I myself am a complete injury, meaning at the point of injury, nothing gets through. So for
nothing meaning like
no feeling,
signals from the brain.
Yeah,
nothing's going down and nothing's coming up.
Correct. It's for me, everything stops at about the mid chest. And I tell you, you don't realize how difficult it is to do simple things like sit up when you don't have core muscles. Because even if you've never done a crunch or a sit up or a plank, you still have some sort of control over your core if you can sit upright without a back on your chair. And those things that, believe it or not, I didn't really take for granted because I prior to getting hurt, I used to try to improve my posture, mainly because I wanted to hit that 6 foot mark. It didn't work, but
if I just stand a little straighter, I can do it.
Yeah, it was a whole lot of that. But I gotta tell you, it just didn't work. But yeah, aside from that, it's a very different way of doing just about everything. You have to learn to time things properly, and like a lot of medical conditions, that runs the gamut. It goes for everything from taking medicine in the right combination at the right time to having to learn to use a catheter. There's a few different types of catheters. Some of them are indwelling, some of them are intermittent. And they have their pros and cons. I myself am on the intermittent team.
Does intermittent increase the likelihood of getting an infection? Or because I can see it both ways. I can see if you are constantly removing and inserting the catheter, that leads to possible infection from handling the equipment. But I could also see if you just keep a cath in, having that like entry point into your body could also lead you susceptible to infection.
So with either, you do have to be careful. To my knowledge, you are more likely to get a UTI from an indwelling catheter because you have that constant pathway than you would through intermittent cathetering. Now, that's not to say that you don't have to take precautions to make sure that, you're less susceptible with intermittent cathing. But again, if you have a doctor or a medical professional on this podcast, if I am incorrect, I'm sure they can correct my incorrectness.
the minute they get on 100 episodes from now, they're like, first thing I want to address, the Sean guy. How does he not know anything about catheters when he uses them on the daily?
This Sean guy is a fraud. Yeah, I mean, there's that. There's the other bathroom activities. Meaning your bowel regimen is quite important. I had a friend who is in no way medical give me a good bit of advice when I first got hurt. The more you move your legs, the faster your metabolism. Now he had a very different situation. He had at a young age, he had to have a hip replaced, and his physical therapist told him that. So that was when they were trying to encourage him to move more. And as someone who was borderline recklessly active before he got hurt, it's like I hit a wall as soon as in terms of my metabolism slowing down as soon as I got hurt. But it's something that you can deal with in a couple different ways. A lot of people in wheelchairs, to my knowledge, based on my experience and my conversations with them, they'll go to the bathroom less frequently because it takes an amount of time to disimpact oneself. But by not doing it frequently, you slow down your metabolism further, which
just kind of backs everything up, and the what do you want to call it, the hunger drive, the feeling of not being satiated probably wanes because of that, I'm guessing.
I can't really speak to that because I take care of it pretty much every day, just so that I like to think I'm at less risk for my metabolism slowing down even more dramatically, which would, add to weight gain, which would add to my risk of things like pressure sores and cholesterol issues, putting on visceral fat. It's a whole lot of health issues that come with your metabolism slowing down.
You mentioned the more you use your legs, the more your metabolism goes. How would you phrase that?
I forgot how I phrased it.
Is that where the stem bike comes in?
So the stem bike is not something that's done by too many people. A lot of the times, even if they can get it approved by insurance, it winds up becoming more of a coat rack than anything else.
Really? Just a hassle to get in and out of, or?
Yeah, I mean, and it's time consuming.
I guess, but I mean, no offense. I'm sure the outdoor activities, especially in the northern states, especially in the wintertime, what are you really doing in the middle of the afternoon during a basketball game or video games or just Netflix binge watching something, what do you got to lose to hop on there?
Dempsy, you got to keep in mind that not everyone who is in a wheelchair is out of work. There are plenty of people that do have 9-to-5 jobs.
I guess, but how many people come home from a 9-to-5 and spend an hour or two just decompressing when they just slap on the pads and go for a ride, doing whatever they were doing anyways, reading a book, listening to a YouTube video,
listening to
TV,
Pondering Pennies,
maybe listening to Pondering Pennies, so
they can debate this Sean guy on his fraudulent knowledge of paralysis.
Some might even say he's a phony. Did he even really have an accident?
He's a
Or-
big phony.
Or is this like one of those dudes that faked being at the Twin Towers during 9/11?
Oh, jeez. For the record, no, I did get very hurt a couple of years ago. just to clear that up for you skeptics out there. So I feel like I should explain that. So we're talking about a stim cycle as if it's a well-known thing. It's a functional electrical stimulation cycle, meaning it's using electrodes to have my legs, which again I can't get moving. It's getting them to ride a stationary bike. So it's pretty solid in that. To my knowledge, I do go farther than the vast majority of people that have these. I do about 13 miles a day. Whereas a lot of people do, in terms of time, I do an hour and a half a day on this bike, just about a little over. But most people do about 30 minutes a couple times a week. I had to get clearance from my doctor and then from the developers of this technology to clear me to use the bike as much as I do. So I got that going for me.
When you said you had to get it cleared with your doctor, were they worried about like overuse at all and straining your muscles? Because it's electrocuting you to propel your muscles to simulate like electrical current from the brain, telling it to perform whatever action. So is there any, or is there like really, since the usual course of action is to underuse it or just not use it at all, is there really no like, yeah, we're not really sure what happens if you use it like a madman or if anything even does really happen?
So you're not wrong. I am highly electrocuting myself a lot. So that's, still up for debate as to how that will affect me in the long term. I had to get cleared because they not for the electrical current situation, but I had to get cleared because they didn't want me to rhabdo myself, meaning they didn't want me to give myself rhabdomyolysis, which is an overuse of the muscle that can cause it to break down. I had to explain to them that I wanted to be able to go further and, bike longer because I like pushing myself. It's part of the reason I was even a little bit decent at being a personal trainer. Yeah.
Because I know you work out a lot in general, regardless of the stem bike. How did like tailoring your workouts to work around being in a wheelchair? Did you get a trainer to like program for you at the beginning till you got the hang of things, or did you just kind of after rehab and everything jump back into it? Because I know I've seen like pictures of you with the chair, like strapped around your waist, climbing, like the ropes in the gym and stuff. So, or videos of you doing like pull ups and stuff. How did you like get back on the swing of things, I guess?
It's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of kind of, can I do this? I can do this? Cool. I'm going to do this. I can't do this? What if I alter it a little? Oh, I still can't do this? I'm going to try and do it anyway. And then it was kind of figuring out what worked. COVID was a bummer because my doctor kind of early on told me, you're one of the people that needs to take this seriously. And that's partially due to my injury, partially because we didn't know what we were dealing with. because of my level of injury, I don't have the strongest diaphragm, so I can't cough real well. So they thought it would be super risky if I did get COVID.
Yeah, if you have a compromised diaphragm, I can't imagine a respiratory disease mixed with that is a real winner of a day for you.
Yeah, to quote South Park, you're gonna have a bad time.
If you get a upper respiratory tract infection or any kind of respiratory distress in general, when you have a weak diaphragm, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah, pretty much.
You French fried when you should have pizzaed.
Exactly. That's more or less the whole idea. But it was difficult because I had been I have a friend that owns a CrossFit gym. He's a real nice guy. It's over in Long Island City. You guys should all go check it out. It's the CrossFit gym over there. I want to say it's CrossFit Unleashed. So if you're in the Long Island City area of New York and you want to work out, great dude owns that gym, and he'll definitely give you a solid workout. But I used to stop by there because he was a friend of mine, and part of it was he's a little bit crazy like me, and we kind of liked seeing what worked and what didn't. So we just kind of kept going with it. And we found some stuff that worked, and we found a lot that didn't. But then when COVID hit, I had to alter a bunch of it to what worked in house. And I'm fortunate. I have a whole bunch of dumbbells. Some I bought, some I've been gifted by people who just were like, I don't work out anymore, and you like working out. Like, all right, well, I wish you went back to working out rather than giving me your old exercise equipment, but I'll take it.
Yeah, especially like weights and stuff. Like a good deal is like $1 a pound. So, you know, depending on the brand, the quality, like that stuff gets expensive quick with weights. Have you had to modify anything at all? Like do you still bench?
I do bench. I don't have a spot, so I'd have to. Where I used to do flat bench, I now have to switch over to dumbbells. Mm-hmm. But that's not really too much of an issue.
How does that work with staying stable on the bench when you're lying down? Do you have like a strap or anything, or as long as like you kind of position your, from like your nipple line up correctly, everything else just kind of falls in line and stays on the bench?
So it's interesting because initially I was having to strap myself to the bench, but after a while I figured out how to bench without the straps because I just worked on my balance. One of the more difficult parts of that, though, is when you go to bench. I don't know about you personally, Dempsey, but a lot of people will carry the weights over. They'll sit down with the weights balanced on their knees, and they'll just kind of kick them back to themselves.
Yep. Kind of either pop them up real quick with your knees, or if I'm doing like real heavy dumbbells, I'll set them on my knees, and then I fall back onto my back with my knees like up. So like my legs are bent at a 90 degrees still, and then I put my legs down with the dumbbells over me. If that makes sense.
Right. No, I totally get what you're saying. And that's like how I would think most people would go about that process. Now, having no effective use of my legs, I basically just I curl the dumbbells off the ground up to a chest position. So I've had to figure that out because for an extended period of time, I could only bench what I could curl.
Just blowing out your shoulders, trying to swing up 90-pound dumbbells.
Pretty much. Well, 90-pound dumbbells, you flatter me. No, I the heaviest I have in my house is 52 and a half.
That's a weird number.
Yeah, it's one of those adjustable dumbbells by Bowflex, I think.
Oh, okay. I thought you just had like a hexagon metal 52.5-pound dumbbell. Like you chip a few pieces off the edges.
I found out the 53-pound dumbbells didn't work, so I chipped off half a pound, and that's what I could curl.
Like this man's got 50-pound dumbbells over here, and he's taking the little chips that you would put on plates on a barbell, and he's just like duct taping them to the side of the 50-pound dumbbell until he gets to 52 and a half.
He's duct taped a bunch of quarters to this dumbbell.
Fun fact, my senior year of wrestling, we had a weight class that was 96 pounds, I think. So that's a little guy, right? So no one on the high school team on varsity or junior varsity was that little. So we had an open slot. Well, it's wrestling, right? It's weight classes. Age doesn't really matter. So we had an 8th grader bump up to varsity. But when you're at that low of a weight class at 96 pounds, there's also a minimum. So he had to weigh in at least 90 pounds, no more than 96 pounds. He didn't weigh 90 pounds. So we would take like these spandex shorts days before matches, and we turn them inside out, and we all be sitting there duct taping these quarters to the inside of the spandex so he could put them on and wear them at weigh-in to like add 1 or 2 pounds so he could make weight.
Jeez.
It was like the exact opposite. We all had like garbage bags and jumpsuits on, skipping rope in the team shower room with all the hot water turned up all the way to like sweat off that last pound. And he's over here eating bonbons and ho-hos and filling up his pants with quarters.
You got Dobby the house elf on your team.
Yep. He's like, I'm in the struggle with you guys. We're like, shut the hell up. You don't know what's happening right now.
I remember,
like, we're in this together. One team, one fight. Like, you're eating pizza. This is not the same.
I remember in college, I had a friend of mine that I used to study anatomy and physiology with, and he was talking about he was a pretty accomplished wrestler in high school, and he was telling me that to make weight 2 days before weigh-in, he would cut his diet down to, I think it was a glass of water and an orange a day. And I was like, what? Why would you do that? Why? If any sport or if anything tried to get me to eat like that, I would just say no.
A good one a lot of people did was water and then honey, because it has so much sugar to give you that energy boost. But it's not like, like a pound of honey is a lot of honey. So it's not like what you were eating honey wise was really adding to your overall weight for weigh-ins.
Interesting.
A lot of people would do that too after weigh-ins. They just start pouring honey into their mouth, because obviously you don't want to like weigh in and then eat a big meal, because you're going to cramp up and feel like crap during the match, especially for tournaments where
Dempsy, how many years did you wrestle?
Oh, I wrestled in high school.
Did you wrestle before high school?
Negative.
Were you involved in any other sports before then?
So the earliest sport I played as a kid was soccer. Fun fact. I feel like most people wouldn't guess that. Stopped playing soccer and started playing hockey. Played hockey all the way up through middle school. Stopped playing on a team, but played like recreationally. And then in middle school started playing football and track, and then through high school, football, track, and wrestling.
Nice. Yeah. My only organized sport was track, believe it or not, and it was only in college. I just joined the team because it got priority housing and registration, and they wouldn't cut me because I would do all the events that people were too hungover to do. So I'd be signed up for long jump, and I'd wind up doing, triple jump and javelin, shot put, the 400.
That's kind of where I was in track too. I did disc, did shot put, did long jump, did triple jump, did high jump, did the 4x4 and the 4x2.
All right, so we're pretty much right in line there. Actually, I was in the same boat doing all those all those events. Not well, mind you, just enough to, say we had someone in the event.
Yeah, especially like the disc and the shot put served me good the first 2 years of high school. Because like I said, coming out of middle school, I was a grown ass man for some reason. Didn't grow sense. So there's like, look at just give the freak the big round ball and tell him to throw it in that direction.
We had,
but then once everyone else started catching up, they're just like, yeah, go jump in, kind of fast. So you need a runner to fill in every once in a while, which is kind of weird. The longest thing they had me do was 400, because I've been told once before, I'm not super fast, but I'm fast for a long time. So like my specialty comes out in the distance. You might beat me in the 100, the 200, the 4, the 8, the mile, but like the Terminator, just moving real slow, walking behind you, never stopping.
Real Michael Myers, Michael Myers-esque movement.
Yep. The girl runs away, gets in a car, drives 10 miles, stops to talk to somebody, tell them what's going on, and then I just come slowly walking out of like a cornfield like, you thought you got away, but I'm here.
Yeah, they're just, they turn around, they see those baby blues, and they're just like, oh my goodness.
Have you ever seen the movie It Follows?
I've heard of it. Is that it's like an STD demon or something like that?
Exactly. I'm the STD demon. You might like hop a flight and get 1,000 miles away from me, but you give it like a month and I'll be there eventually.
I'm gonna get you.
But yeah, not fast off the jump, but fast for a long time, if that makes sense.
Nah, I get you. That makes sense to me.
But with somebody with your kind of injury, I've heard you say at some points, like the doctors don't really understand the spine. Like it sounds like out of all things anatomy with the body, like the spine is the ocean floor of the body. Like not really 100% sure about it. And you could always just wake up one morning and start tap dancing and they'd be like, yeah, sure, if you say so.
A little dramatic, but yeah, that's there's a lot of things that aren't understood about the spine. We know it's important, so that's good. I had a doctor once tell me that you could, and I don't know how anyone would know this, but he's telling me that the spine is kind of elastic, which seems strange to me, but he says that in theory you could fling a spine across a room, and as long as it's it's not like, obviously not shot out of a cannon, but as long as it's not damaged, it should still work in theory. But if you put even a pinhole in a spine, there's a chance that it just stops working correctly. So
it's kind of like a bungee cord had a baby with a car tire.
And they just said, let's make it really difficult and important.
So for your injury in particular, is there physical damage to the spine? Like a section of it is severed or crushed, or just like had occluded blood flow that caused damage or something? Or is there still a like actual like your spine compressing it, or fragments of your spine in there? Like what?
Based on what I've been told, if you looked at my spine next to most other spines that aren't injured, it would probably look very similar. My spine was pinched for, I don't know, something like, it was just under 2 days, I think, before they eventually had a partial laminectomy and spinal stabilization, where they kind of put it all back together. But
did they like go in and where that vertebrae was collapsed on your spine, just like take it out in chunks and pack in like cadaver vertebrae, or fuse the vertebrae below and above that?
It's a good question. It's something I never really even bothered to ask. So I had, because the vertebrae was still there in most part. They told me, um, again, the odds, the like, more or less, one of the most amazing things about that accident is that no one died. I was the most seriously injured in such an accident. Well, in that accident, they told me that basically I only survived because of the shape I was in. The muscle in my back took the brunt of the impact, but it was still enough to shatter the two vertebrae or burst fractures. And they, when I say spinal stabilization, I mean they kind of line them back up and then put rods in my back. But if I wasn't
Through
in the
the
shape
two
I was in, I'd
vertebrae.
be dead. So
Those rods went through those two vertebrae, or
I believe they're alongside.
oh, okay.
And then there's some bolts into the vertebrae. That's
Have you
my
flown
understanding.
since?
Have I what?
Flown since the injury?
I have not. But when I've gone to like a sporting event, they still wand me down, and I don't like. I'm not entirely sure what they're looking for because the wheelchair is going to set it off. My back's probably going to set it off. I shouldn't even take my keys out of my pocket because I'm basically made of metal at this point.
Does the wand just go boop, 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 all over the place? Or
Yeah, and the guy looks at me like I'm doing something wrong.
he's like, could you please stop whatever you're doing? It's like, oh, my apologies. Let me just flop on the floor for you real quick.
Let me flop on the floor and have someone remove the titanium from my back. How rude of me.
You're right. I'm the asshole here. My apologies. Funny. Do you attend any ongoing rehab or like keep up on any medical literature on like advancements in spinal therapy, rehab, surgeries, stem cells?
Every once in a while, I'll do some reading on the matter, and you learn some interesting stuff. But a lot of the times, um, it's kind of a rehashing of research that's already been done, just kind of brought to the forefront again through a new headline, almost.
Have you ever thought of, because I feel like you hear a lot, stem cells like seem are a touchy subject in the US, right? They've been very politicized. But I feel like you hear a lot of people going to other countries where they give them out like candy because they're I don't want to say they're not regulated at all, but they're not they're they're treated just like any other medical treatment. Like they're not looked at any kind of way like they are in the US. And people with random injuries that like they could not get any help with in the US, all of a sudden they like see a 180 because of stem cell therapy.
So one of the interesting things about stem cells is, at least based on what I've read, we know how to start them up, but sometimes they don't turn off. So the idea that they can kind of proliferate almost uncontrolled in some circumstances, well, that's another ball of wax entirely. That's a completely different problem, but it's still a problem,
So it's almost like try this and hope it doesn't turn into cancer.
I don't know if cancer would be the right term, but yeah, it's well, I guess uncontrolled cell growth would be
Yeah, I think
very
any kind
similar.
of like uncontrolled division of cells would be categorized as cancer. I could be wrong. I'm no doctor.
Yeah, neither am I. I was a guy that got paid to I was a guy that got paid to tell you what weights to lift up, and then also to not have any emotion at the door of a bar.
Don't forget, pulling people out of water and breathing into their mouths.
Right, I did have that. And then technically I was certified to be an EMT, but that's another ball of wax entirely.
Have you thought about pursuing any kind of career? Or are you kind of content where you are? Or maybe, maybe in the future, not writing it off, but just not right now?
No, I'm not right. I don't try not to write anything off. So I try to leave myself at least open to the idea of almost anything. At this point in time, though, I'm pretty content with what I do. Have some investments that, knock on wood, have so far done all right. And then,
Don't lie. We all know you just YOLO'd it all into Dogecoin.
well, it worked. It worked, so I'm not gonna complain about it. But it's allowed me to. I also have a very low upkeep. I don't have super expensive hobbies. I don't have like an elaborate appetite or.
He says he doesn't have an elaborate appetite, but may we touch on the fact that you recently acquired a Picasso and contemplated a mammoth tusk?
I don't always make the best decisions. I will give you that, but that does. The Picasso was was part of an auction for charity, so someone did benefit from that, other than some art gallery. And it's a lithogram. It's not a painting. Sorry, a lithograph, not a painting, which is a very interesting process in and of itself. Making a lithograph, I wouldn't do it justice explaining it here, so I'm going to suggest, if you're interested, you look up how it's done.
Is it basically just a reproduction?
It's done by the artist, but it involves, I believe, limestone and a very complicated looking press. It is an interesting process, to say the least.
Interesting. So is it what is more sought after, a Picasso painting or a Picasso lithograph?
Oh, definitely a painting, because you can, once you have the press made, you can kind of keep popping out these copies. But the idea
lithographs.
Is that the artist himself did the
painting.
Yeah, well, yeah, the copy.
Okay.
Or made the copy, made the lithograph itself. So that's cool.
Have you thought about acquiring, hear me out, mammoth tusk, right? Instead, if you wanted to, you could pay for the both of us to go on a trophy hunt to Africa. And we could shoot like an elephant or a rhino or a lion or a giraffe or a wombo combo, maybe all four. And you could just get life-size mounts and put them in your house. And you can donate, and all the funds from that trophy hunt get donated to charity if you didn't know.
I'm not a hunter. I'm not a hunter, and also most of what you just described, again, elephants not doing great, rhinos not doing great.
They're not doing great, but I think most people don't know is trophy hunts. So if somebody goes and shoots an elephant, they're paying $100,000 to do that. And they're not just walking out in their backyard like they're in Wisconsin and shooting a white-tailed deer. So there is conservation efforts in Africa. And if they get an old male elephant that is no longer reproducing and adding to the herd, they will put that elephant up for auction. And then, generally speaking, these very affluent people will come out and they'll pay $10,000, sometimes $100,000 to shoot this animal. That money is then taken and put towards the conservation efforts of the rest of the herd.
So I do understand that. I still think that there's better ways to raise money for conservation that don't involve having to take down a bull elephant. I mean, they're wildly intelligent creatures, and I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me.
Seems like the circle of life. If it's gonna die anyways, why not get $100,000 to use towards the rest of the elephants? What is more wasteful, to take a life of an animal and then have that meat to donate to local villages on top of a surplus of money to benefit the remaining animals, or to allow it to die and rot next to a watering hole?
Well, that's an interesting take, but I still think it leaves a lot of room for it to go sideways, because there's always the this is I don't know, let's say a 50-year-old male, and then suddenly it's this is it's a 45-year-old male, it's a 40-year-old man. I mean, it's a concept that I do understand where you're coming from. Not for me.
I think it is important to note they're not like willy-nilly choosing as well. Like, there is check boxes that these things, have to meet. It's called a called killing. So elk farms in the US do it. Deer farms in the US do it when they have, either an old female that is no longer producing offspring, or an old male that is no longer fertile, producing offspring. They'll call that animal from the herd before it ends up just dying of old age. That way they can still, seek some monetary value from it to be able to use and put back towards the rest of the herd. Or if it gets sick or has some kind of genetic defect that you wouldn't want passed on to the rest of the herd through continued breeding, they'll, immediately remove that animal as well. So, for some reason, you start seeing, growths on a white-tailed deer. Like, I've shot a white-tailed deer before. It was in the wild. I didn't pay to hunt it. They had a lot of growths and stuffs on that. If that was obviously in a conservation area, whatever government agency, depending on the country, is in charge of that area would probably act, especially if it's an endangered species, to remove that from the herd so those genetics don't continue to get passed along.
I could see that. But again, I mean, there's a big difference between a sick white-tailed deer and even a sick elephant. There's just, you're talking about something that white-tailed deer, you can drive into any town in rural Pennsylvania and suddenly you have a chance of accidentally hitting one. You got to go really, really out of your way to try and find an elephant a lot of the time, and it's not getting easier to find them. So
I guess I think it's an added surplus, and I think we should go on a hunt. Or maybe you just sponsor me and I'll strap a GoPro to my chest for you. You can like a live leak feed. You're watching it.
A little unrelated, but in the same GoPro-esque vein of ideas, I have had a lot of weddings over the last couple of years.
It's almost like it's your new job. It's almost like that's your career post-COVID.
My career is just going to weddings.
Yeah.
But I've made a deal with a friend of mine that, if they come up with some sort of elaborate way to fix my legs or my spine, that's the only way I plan. I plan on missing a wedding unless I'm sick or I have another wedding, which has happened. But if I am out getting my legs and spine fixed, it's his job to go to these weddings with an iPad so I can FaceTime in. And I made the deal with him that he doesn't have to get dressed up. So if you see a guy walking around with an iPad at a wedding in a pair of pajama pants and a hoodie, I'm probably on that iPad.
I give it another decade, and we'll see like Amazon warehouse robots, and there'll be like a blank like rectangle where you can slap an iPad in, and that, and the robot goes walking around, and it's just your face in the iPad, and you're looking through the camera at everything that's going on.
I mean, I heard, I was watching something not too long ago, and this guy was talking about a new issue that they're having with AI, where these people are forming, it's not entirely a romantic relationship per se, but like a chat GTP-esque program is basically these people's significant others, or as close to a significant
AI
other.
is courting people.
Well, yes, but also, it is kind of a select group of people that are interested in this sort of relationship with a program.
I don't know how to feel about this right now.
I was going to say, do you have any thoughts on this?
I feel an ever sense of disappointment in the average populace. I guess the way to put it. I just assume these are the same people that live their lives on social media instead of in person, or maybe I'm guessing demographically these are probably more often than not males over females. So I'm also getting strong incel type vibes, or anime weebs who adopt waifu pillows, but that general demographic, I think, is probably the ones that are the culprits in this case.
I couldn't speak to what the demographic was. I just found it a little. The upsetting thing is not even all that alarming, because it just kind of seems like the natural progression of things at this point. But it was one of those things where I was like, well,
have like sex stores for robots, like it's like a brothel, but instead like you put your wiener in a robot.
Can't speak to that. I know you can hire both males and females, I believe it's Japan, to basically take you on a date. It's not like prostitution. They're just paying these people for a dating experience,
like an escort without the implied sex. Like the escort doesn't have to have sex with you, but we all know why you're getting an escort. So it's like an escort minus the sex.
I mean, I guess so, yeah.
Because you go on a date and do things with the escort or the sex, because the sex is implied, it's not part of the transaction. It's got to be prostitution. So it's an escort, but at the end of the night, you go your separate ways instead of to the Las Vegas hotel room.
Yeah, so I guess that's basically what this is.
A non-sexual escort.
Now, I know we talked about some things that are a little alarming in society. So I think we should talk about something that everyone just all agrees is fantastic.
Foot Finder.
I was going to say that there's another Fast and Furious movie coming out.
God. Okay, I guess that's a little bit better than Foot Finder, but I will admit I have not seen a single Fast and Furious movie. But I feel like the Transformers series is becoming the new Fast and Furious.
Is there another Transformers coming out?
There is. I have no idea how many there are now. I have not seen a Transformer movie since Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox were in it together. And one of them goes off to college and they break up, but they don't break up. For all I know, that could have been the third one, could have been the first one, could have been the fourth one. It was at least the second, because I know I watched one before that. But
I know the thing that stuck out to me about the first Transformers movie was how orange all the people were.
Were they orange? Was that like
they just really went
spray tans?
They went real heavy into the filters to make them look tan. And in my mind, they came out looking orange. Bunch of carrot people walking around with robots.
As Sean would say, they came out looking orange.
Yeah, yeah.
Orange.
We've been having this argument for years now that when I say orange, all Dempsey hears is orange.
Well, you could just say it normal because you say it as orange.
All right. Okay. Moving on.
But yeah, I went to the movies this afternoon.
What'd you
Saw
see?
Renfield, the new Dracula movie,
I want to see that one.
and there was a preview for a new Transformers movie, and Optimus Prime was fighting a robotic King Kong. The best I could tell. The last one I saw was
tracks.
like Transformers: Rise of the Dinosaurs, and this one was like Transformers: Rise of the Beast. I don't know if the next one is going to be Transformers: Rise of the Aquatics, Rise of Cthulhu. I don't know.
Transformers. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. We're just going through the evolution timeline. So next one will be Transformers: Rise of the Homo sapien Transformers.
Like, I think there was even one where they fought Godzilla. I'm pretty sure there was a Godzilla Transformers.
Well, I mean, are you talking about the Godzilla movie where there was a mecha Godzilla?
Maybe. I might be drawing a line between those two. But I'm going to say at this point with the Transformers movies, it's not a wild thing to say that I think there was a Godzilla Transformer movie.
No, I mean that would fit the mold pretty well. So I don't doubt it.
But yeah, if I don't remember if you asked or not, but Renfield, incredibly average on a scale of 1 to 10. I will say a 6, slightly above average. I can't remember the last movie I saw of Nicolas Cage from National Treasure in it.
I tell you, the last movie I saw with Nicolas Cage was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Nicolas Cage and Pedro Pascal. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I am a sucker for a good Nick Cage movie, but I had a good time with that one.
You know, I told people that I wanted to see Renfield at work this past week, and they were just hating on him. I was like, Nicolas Cage? They're like, yeah. And I'm not great with actors. So I was like, the guy from the National Treasure series? They're like, yeah, that's terrible. I was like, what? I'm like, the guy from Ghost Rider? They're like, yeah, also terrible. I was like, what?
The man from Face Off?
I was like, do I just have a bad taste in movies? They're like, oh, terrible series. I was like, well, screw you guys. I'm watching Renfield. But also, the other main guy in it is, you ever seen the movie Warm Bodies with the zombies?
Yes, I have seen that one.
So he is actually Renfield in the movie. The movie Renfield is named after the main character's last name. So the dude from Warm Bodies is Renfield. And then Nicolas Cage is Dracula.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I really didn't understand what Renfield was until like 3 minutes in the movie. He's like, I'm Robert Winkleton Renfield. You're like, oh, okay. That's where the name of the movie came from.
Robert Winkleton. Imagine having the middle name of Winkleton.
I honestly don't remember what his name was. I think it was William something Renfield. But it was like some kind of like, like British, possibly aristocrat kind of trying to sound name. So I was just like,
Well,
Robert Winkleton.
Of course, I only said that because we all know that Ray's middle name is Winkleton.
Ray Winkleton Helmingbird the Third.
That's canon now.
Canon. It's canon. It's going to be on the Wikipedia page if anyone ever makes one.
We have some nerdy contacts. I'm sure we can get someone to whip that up real quick.
I could see Slick Dog and the mathematician, because his gamer tag is, I don't remember what it was before we all switched to the different names. So the mathematician and Slick Dog would be the two to do that, I believe. Or the Wookiee. The Wookiee is a dedicated man. I feel like he might do it as well. But my money's on Slick Dog or the mathematician.
I like that everyone has interesting names, and then it's Sean.
To be fair, you said that's what you wanted to roll with.
Well, it's because we agreed that llamas was going to be far too confusing for most people.
Yeah, yeah. And just some people, refer to themselves in the third person a lot. So if you're not rolling with like a somewhat normal alias, I feel like, it's easy to not run with. I was thinking to myself, llamas.
Well, I mean, the joke's on you guys, because when I think in my head, I do think of my name as llamas, not Sean.
You know what a problem I have about thinking in my head? And the wife, the producer, gets mad at me about this, is somebody will say something to me and like I repeat what they said to me in my head and I think about it. But then I go down this rabbit hole of answering in my head and then game planning what they are going to say and then what I'm going to say and then what they're going to say and then what I'm going to say. Next thing I know, the entire conversation over the last 20 minutes has occurred in my head. And then like a day or two goes by and she's like, so what about that thing this weekend? I'm like, yeah, we're doing it. I made all the plans, blah, 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 blah. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we talked about this. She's like, no, we did not. You didn't even answer me. I was like, oh, well, in my head, we had quite the thorough conversation.
Yeah, you made some very good points.
Made me rethink my whole life.
You know what? I think you should talk about a recent headwear acquisition that you got, because I feel like that might be a fun little.
Oh, you mean the Las Vegas and Cheerios?
I mean the Las Vegas and Cheerios.
So fun fact for everyone. I was watching this puppy that's a corgi the other week for the producer's coworker, and I was taking pictures and sending them to Sean. He's a cute puppy.
I do appreciate a cute puppy, so it was much appreciated.
I guess it was my bad for leaving it somewhat open, although I'm 99% sure I did not say, this is my new puppy. Sean thought I got a new puppy. So he bought corgi themed socks and sent them to me. Well,
as friends do,
of course. He bought them on like an Etsy like app though. And, he had to put my address in, of course, to send the socks. Well, how long ago was it till your next shopping spree? Was it the same day?
My next shopping spree, I bought 2 hats later that day.
He didn't change his address. So, I'm sitting at work and this package gets delivered at my front door and I see it on the cameras and I text the producer and I'm like, did you order something? She's like, no. I'm like, what the heck got delivered to the house? And then like literally like 30 minutes after that, Sean's going, oh, you're going to have some stuff showing up at your house here soon. I bought you something. But then I forgot to change the address on my app and I bought more stuff. So it's just all coming to your house now. So I'm now the proud owner of a pair of corgi socks. I don't even know what color Cheerios are because they're not like tan.
I feel like it's yellow.
Kind of like a yellowish cream. When I think yellow, I think like a lemon though, and they're not yellow lemon. Like
no,
it's pretty subdued brownish creamy yellow, almost like a cake donut, right? Kind of like a cake donut.
I could understand that
yeah reason. So I have like a cake donut hat with black Cheerios across the top and a flat brim Vegas hat. I have graciously donated the Vegas hat to the producer Samantha, and I'm rocking the Cheerio hat. So good times.
Yeah.
Overnight, I had 2 hats prior to this to my name. So overnight, my hat collection doubles. And the 2 hats I had borderline might not even qualify as 2 hats because they're same exact hat, just one's red and one's blue.
Oh, well, that's a fun little factoid.
Yeah, now you know. Maybe one day we'll have a Jeopardy episode on Pondering Pennies. How many hats does Dempsey have?
4. How many hats did he buy? 2.
What percentage of hats did Sean buy out of Dempsey's collection? 50%.
I like that the trivia for Pondering Pennies is all based around hats and your hat collection.
Out of Dempsey's hat collection, How many base colors are included in his hat? 4.
How many of his hats has he given to his wife?
1. With 25%.
And now I think we've run through all possible combinations that you might see on the trivia episode of Pondering Pennies.
How many hats are a repeat but a different color scheme?
Just kidding. We're still going with it, apparently.
50% of them. 50% were bought by Sean, and the other 50% are just the same hat in different colors. A very simple man. Some say he also goes into American Eagle and buys the same exact pair of jeans, but in different colors. Which is not a lie. Last time I went there, found the pair of jeans that I usually wear. I bought them in light blue, dark blue, and black. I was like, yes, very good.
Well, what else do you need, really?
When you see, my problem is, Dick comment, but I know you don't have this issue. I have big thighs.
Oh, poor baby.
And big calves.
Oh,
especially for my waist. I don't have an hourglass figure, but the general public, a 32-inch waist, I feel like is smaller than average.
You know what my waist is?
28.
It's like a 26.
I was going to say 26, but I thought that would be too heavy-handed, so I was like 28.
Yeah, it's like a 26. So, I'm over here looking. I've described myself as both having a Dorito body type.
That's desirable. Everyone loves a good Dorito back these days.
Or Genie from Aladdin, where I have shoulders that go down into nothing.
Just a whiskey tail down there. But so my problem is I'll get like a 32 pant, right? And it's just like skin tight on my legs. Like,
right, because you like skinny jeans.
And it's not, calm down there, Captain Huck. But it's not maybe I'm like autistic or something. I don't like tight clothes. I don't like things like, I'm very peculiar. It's
funny. So originally I bought the Cheerios hat for my dad. You know what my dad also dislikes?
Tight clothes?
Tight clothes. I think you and my dad might have a very productive conversation.
Well, rumor has it, I hear he's a real Fox News kind of dad. So Fox News dad, good from what I hear. Fox News mom, not good.
Well, I got one of both, and I can tell you they're fine.
They are fine. Quite adequate.
Yeah, I mean they're a little set in their ways, but I think that's most people when you get down to it.
They're also like 100 years old, so that's also just kind of the boomer generation.
Well, I don't know about they're in their 60s. They're oddly enough, I'm debatably the healthiest one in the family, so take that as you will.
The obesity rate in America has got to be like over 70% at this rate, so that's also not a hard milestone to set. They're like, oh, you ate a salad this week and like walked to the mailbox? You're killing it, my guy. Top 90 percentile for activity.
I've had back when I was a personal trainer, I would have to interview people when they wanted to sign up for training. One of the questions that I always kind of cringed at asking was, how would you describe your level of activity? I got to tell you, it wasn't good. Was not good for a lot of folks.
They're like, activity? You do things other than eat, sleep, and work? What?
Oh, it was
this was not in the playbook given to me.
My level of activity is super high. Oh, great. What do you do? Well, my office is on the first floor and my bedroom is on the second floor. So I do at least 4 or 5 flights of stairs a day. Uh-huh. Right. Indeed. We have a lot of work to do.
I know it's bad because when I go for my annual doctor checkup and I'm doing the little questionnaire about like, smoking, drinking, all that stuff. They're like, so you mismarked here that you don't drink. I'm like, I don't. They're like, yeah, okay, buddy. So how often do you drink? I'm like, I don't drink. I'll drink like someone's birthday or if they're moving and I'm not going to see them, like going away for somebody or whatever, funerals, weddings, special occasions. We're not all you going to 30 weddings a year. So I can generally count on one hand, if not definitely two hands, how many times I drink throughout the year. So they're like, yeah, okay, you don't drink, sure. Like, but you put here that you don't smoke. So how many packs are we at a day? What? I don't smoke. They're like, so chewing tobacco, huh? Because you also marked that as, not being filled out. I'm like, no tobacco products. I don't vape, I don't chew, I don't smoke, I don't drink, but I can put away some Dr. Pepper. I tell you what, if that was on the questionnaire, that would probably pop as a red flag. We're just like, stop lying to us. We know you do these things.
I know. I'm just gonna kind of guess that you're a Dr. Pepper purist. How are you feeling about the strawberry Dr. Pepper that I've seen in ads recently?
So I will say, Dr. Pepper is the king of soft drinks, and any other usurper to the throne is simply a pretender, a fraud, a fake, and will be found out on their own accord soon enough. But when a soft drink has 23 flavors, I challenge you to find one that you don't like. And when you think about it, when you start adding in things like cherry, vanilla, and strawberry, well, my brother, that's just bringing it up to 24 flavors. And if you can't find a flavor in there that you don't like, I would say that you are a bold-faced liar.
I will be honest, the first Dr. Pepper I had was when you came and visited New York.
No, that was not the first Dr. Pepper you've ever had. Is it really?
I'm pretty sure it was, yeah.
Have you had Dr. Pepper since?
I don't drink soda very often.
Well, it's pop, but continue.
Oh boy, here we go. You got pop, you got soda, you call it we got some fizzy drinks in here.
I've never heard that before. I will tolerate soda. I will get slightly confrontational, but I will tolerate soda. If you call it Coke, though, we are challenging to a duel like it is 1820 and someone must die.
Well, who's going to call it Coke? Coke is a specific type of soda.
Thank you. It's a specific type of pop, yes. But you would be surprised how many people call it Coke. And you'd be surprised since leaving New York how many restaurants I've been to. And I'm like, Dr. Pepper, please? They're like, we don't have that. I'm like, Coke, please? They're like, what kind? And I'm like, Coke. Samantha, get up. We're leaving. These aren't our kind of people.
But I love IHOP.
But it's a thing. It's a thing in other parts of the country. Pop is Coke. And Coke is not Coke. Because Coke is pop. If you want Coke, you got to ask for a Coke. Coke is also Pepsi. It's Sprite. And Mountain Dew.
Have you ever been to a Coke factory?
I have not.
I have been. Would you like to guess which country this Coke factory was in?
China.
Yep, you got it. Solid guess. Over in China, they were using pure sugar cane in the Coke too, which was interesting.
Yeah. I said we put cocaine back in Coke and really lighten things up.
I mean, aside from cocaine and Coke, there's which, obviously a joke for any future plans reasons. It's not a joke though. Reintroducing wolves to the society. Not society, sorry. The environment.
Look, the people are already getting behind it. They're already doing it for me. They're reintroducing wolves into Colorado. The ballot measure passed. It's happening. I don't even have to convince the people to do it. They're already ready.
Now, do you want to explain your reasoning for reintroducing wolves?
Yes, 100%. It serves many benefits. First of all, I'm not a gun nut, but I am a gun advocate. If there is wolves just running rampant through the streets of everywhere, like downtown New York, people are going to want to have guns, and they're going to stop with this gun control stuff. If there's a wolf at your front door, by golly, you need a gun. Twofold. If there's wolves in the streets, you're going to have to be fast and nimble. Gone are the days of 350-pound dudes that are 5'5" slamming down Big Macs. Buddy, you got a wolf to run from. Either you're running from that wolf, or it's not your problem anymore because the wolf's going to catch you. Either way, you will not be 350 for very long.
No, there is
threefold.
Oh,
there will be panic in the streets. The government will be forced to deal with the homeless population. or the homeless population just won't be a problem any longer. Me personally, I hope they solve the homeless population and not the wolves. Either way, that epidemic will come to an end.
Huh. Now
You can't get behind solving the issue on guns, obesity, and homelessness. What can you get behind in today's America? And I tell you, I'm going to do it one wolf at a time.
Well, there has been on the environmental front some actual concrete evidence that reintroducing wolves into places like Yellowstone has had a really positive effect on the environment in such places.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a grazing issue in certain parks with rivers and bank washout and stuff due to overgrazing because of not strong enough predator presence to keep down populations and stuff. But I will also say, in all seriousness, reintroducing wolves into Yellowstone is a completely different order than what they're about to do in Colorado and take 50 wolves and just drop them in Vail, Colorado, and like high country ski resort area where you're gonna have all these tourists, and also you're just gonna have a couple dozen wolves running around eating people's dogs.
You want to hear a fun fact?
Always.
Yeah. So back in, I believe, the 40s, they were trying to move a certain amount of beavers to a new location, and they couldn't figure out how to do it. So they eventually settled on dropping them out of planes in little parachute boxes.
Oh, Jesus.
And you know who the first test subject was? And I kid you not, it was a beaver named Geronimo.
Oh, God.
However, they did successfully drop, I think it was like all of the beavers except one landed safely. The one that didn't land safely panicked midair, and I think he fell to his death. But the rest of them did great. So that was, they had a problem with beavers. They needed to relocate them. They came up with a super creative solution, and it worked. It worked for all of them except that one that fell to its death.
How does a beaver panicking affect? So, like, did the beavers have a hand in like the deploying of the parachute, or like how does the beaver panicking affect him making it safely to the ground? What part did the beaver play in that him panicking was the travesty of a lifetime that led to his death? Like, who did not make a fully automated system for parachuting beavers that required them to remain calm during free fall through
it was the 40s. A lot was going on. But no, I'm pretty sure
before the war on drugs. They were doing a lot of shrooms and DMT and all kinds of stuff, coming up with this beaver contraption.
So I'm fairly certain the beaver that passed away, God rest his little beaver soul, I think he panicked and somehow opened his crate midair.
Jesus.
I mean, now we know that word didn't always travel super quickly back in the day. So I like to think if there was anyone camping in the area and all of a sudden a bunch of paratrooping beavers start landing around them, I don't know about you, but I would be in sheer panic mode.
I mean, depending on when it happened in the 40s, they're like, the Nazis are here. The Nazis are here.
My God, the Nazis are beavers.
Japan took it a step further. First Pearl Harbor, now this. Weaponizing beavers?
When will it end?
It's funny because it's not, because millions of people died, but it's pretty funny.
Oh, jeez. No. Okay.
Well, before we wrap it up here, one interesting thing I think it is to circle back around, since we were talking about, your love for trophy hunting in Africa through Thurampic. If you could hit me with that word, please.
Philanthropic.
Yes. Your desire to help out others. You funded a well in Africa. What was that like? How'd you come across that process? Just doing some Google-ins? Were you propositioned? Were you kidnapped? How'd that come to be?
So it kind of circles back to my watching an ungodly amount of basketball. I was watching Inside the NBA with Shaq and Ernie and Kenny and Charles, and they had on at the time, I believe he played for the Bucks. They had on Malcolm Brogdon. He was talking about how his foundation was opening up. They were opening wells in Africa to supply water to societies and villages that otherwise wouldn't have ready access to clean water. And at the time, I was not in a position to help, but I thought, wow, that would be cool if that was something that I could help with at some point. And I at a different point in life, I was now able to help, and I shot him a DM on Instagram. A couple days later, someone from his foundation got back to me. We set up a couple phone calls, and we kind of figured out the logistics. Super nice dude, and we have the well is in Tanzania, and it's been really good for the society the society and the group of people that it's been able to help over there. From my understanding, really helps.
Is there any plans to fund future wells or plans to visit the well to see the impact?
I would love to visit, but I think that's something that I would wait until they figure out how to fix spines. Because one thing I know about nations like Tanzania is small towns and villages aren't usually particularly wheelchair accessible. They have that in common with a lot of New York, actually. But
I think I know you don't like not being independent. Is not the proper way to put it, but it's the best that comes to mind right now. So, have you thought about ever getting one of those like off-road wheelchairs? Like it's got the little joystick to propel you forward so you don't have to push yourself and stuff, but like these things are beefy. They got like mud tires, they got like leaf springs for shock absorbance systems in it. They got like airbags that like automatically change to keep you level and stuff, so you can really get after, you know what I'm saying? It's like the rednecks version of a monster truck but for wheelchairs. And I think that could open up to some possibilities for different things you could be doing.
I mean, I've seen wheelchairs that have tank treads as the in lieu of wheels.
Tell me that's not cool. Tell me you don't want to go on a hike in a tank.
It would be an experience. That is, you are correct in that.
Never, not very enthusiastic sounding behind that.
I mean, these things are incredibly niche, and they're not exactly what you would call cost effective. They're also
what does one cost? Like $20,000?
Somewhere between, I would think, 20 and 40, but it's
if I can afford the wheelchair, Sean, you can afford the wheelchair.
I mean, it's more than that though, because there's maintenance issues with it. It's a very specialized item, and very specialized items take a long time to get repaired. Even a wheelchair, it can take weeks to get a wheelchair fixed in some cases.
Really?
Yeah, because there's only certain companies that cater to fixing the wheelchair. Now, something like if you popped a tire, let's say, you can go to almost any bike shop and have that fixed. But if you have something more specialized, like like let's say a broken hinge on the back of your chair, or maybe a caster has just worn through on the front part. Now you're looking at something that you're gonna have to fight to try and get the wheelchair folks to your place sooner rather than later.
Do you have spare? Do you have a backup wheelchair in case your
I
wheelchair goes
do.
down for an extended
I do.
period of time?
I do have a backup wheelchair.
It's not your travel one, is it? Is it like just like an actual like everyday
Well,
backup wheelchair?
So I have one wheelchair that's a little bit nicer than the other one. It's the newer one, and I use that one. I'm sitting in it right now, but I use that one if I'm like going out. It's a little bit lighter than the other one, but I guess that would be my backup wheelchair, for lack of a better term.
Interesting. The travel wheelchair, is it actually lighter and smaller, or does it just fold up?
Yeah, you're talking about the one I'm sitting in now, because both of my wheelchairs fold up. And until I had the second wheelchair, I was using the other wheelchair, the heavier one, whenever I went somewhere.
Oh, okay. Is that the one you were in when we were at Slick Dog's house?
That was the lighter wheelchair. So when I say lighter and heavier, it's not a massive difference. It's I think 34 pounds versus 37 and a half, something like that.
Oh, someone needs to make a better wheelchair. What are they made out of? Aluminum? They can't be made out of aluminum. They'd be way lighter, right?
I think the one is titanium. I don't know if the other one is titanium as well.
Titanium lighter than aluminum? Like, isn't that its whole thing? Like, super light yet strong?
I think aluminum is lighter, but I could be wrong. But the reason the one is heavier than the other, and this made me laugh because it was my first wheelchair, and they're trying to explain to me, they're like, yeah, we're going to put this crossbar here, and it'll be able to support up to 300 pounds. And I looked at them, and I said, what do you expect me to be wheeling around? And they looked at me dead in the face and said, unfortunately, a lot of people do put on weight after they get hurt.
What do you expect me to be wheeling around? They're like, you in like 2 years.
At the time, so that was another thing. When I woke up in the hospital, just to track back to that, when I woke up in the rehab hospital, I was 124 pounds. I was down a full 34 pounds in 12 days.
Yeah, the opposite effect.
Well, that's what happens when, you're not exactly eating real well. But
True.
Yeah, so I looked at them, and I looked at me, and I looked back at them, and I said, you guys expect me to put on almost 180 pounds? Where am I going to put that on?
Like, you expect me to put on 150% of my current body weight?
Yeah. For reference, I'm weighing in these days somewhere between a whopping 130 and a monstrous 140. So
that's pretty good. I know some dudes that are like 6'2" and, have full mobility of their body, and they weigh like 130 pounds. I'm like, bro, eat, go to the gym, do something. What are you doing?
Yeah. Most of my weight, I'm very top heavy these days.
He's like a newborn baby with that big head till they develop the neck muscles just bobbling around.
Yeah, exactly. I'm basically a bobblehead, but at the waist.
Too funny. Well, thank you for coming on Pondering Pennies. I know you've been a loyal listener, providing good feedback. I got a good feeling about this episode. I can just sense it in my giblies that the audio is crisp.
Oh,
that
good.
The conversation is just right. Minus Ray. Unfortunately, we didn't touch on that. Everyone's like, wait, did they kill off Ray? Where's Ray?
I thought they'd never ask.
Did the roommate come out of jail and seek revenge on Ray for talking about him in the prior episodes? What happened to Ray? The people demand to know, where's Ray? Where for those of you, all 5 of you who don't know, Ray had to take a last minute work trip. So he's going to be gone for the next few weeks, but he will be back. He will be back.
My big hope is he doesn't come back engaged. That's all I hope for him.
You know, it's every man has his vices. Some people are gamblers. Some people are smokers. Some people are drinkers. Some people get married 10 times. It just, I drink Dr. Pepper. You watch basketball.
Yeah.
Like too much basketball. Ray gets engaged a lot.
That's true. Well, if I ever am invited back on the podcast, I would hope Ray is also involved. He has quite the way with words. He's a real silver tongue devil, that man.
Some would say he's Mr. Suave.
Though some people may not be able to hear.
All right. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you for going in deep with the mic and everything, you know, against my wishes, but the support, the full drive is greatly appreciated.
I'm just here for my friend's success.
All right. Sean, do you have any social medias you would like to plug? I know you are quite the Instagram guy.
Actually, Dempsey, I've been off Instagram now for a couple months. It's been very liberating.
I did notice a decline in messages from Instagram. Now, when you say you're off of it, you've deleted your account or you just logged out?
I deleted my account. I couldn't deal with the incessant advertisements that wouldn't even show me what my friends were up to. I was just seeing what all these randos were doing and then getting advertisements for shirts I didn't need. I'd wind up buying the shirts, but I didn't need them.
So you're strictly an iFunny kind of guy now, I see.
I get most of my memes through people sending me memes.
The group chat. Got it.
Pretty much.
All right. Thank you again. This has been another episode of Pondering Pennies.